All right, welcome back to the program. Joining me right now is Paul Alaje, who is the Senior Economist at SPM Professionals. Welcome to you, Paul, and thanks for joining us on the program.
Thank you so much for having me.
We're looking at unemployment in Nigeria, and unemployment, you can say, simply defined as the proportion of those in the labor force who are actively looking for work, but can't find jobs, perhaps for at least 20 hours. But I know the investors say 40 hours in a week. Perhaps that's when you are actively in work. With this, do you think that rising unemployment rate in the country is a critical and central issue of discourse?
Thank you so much for having me. When you look at what the figure is saying, because we need to know what the last figure released, what it says, 27.1% according to National Bureau of Statistics, and 28.6% is underemployment. So putting it in right perspective, when you look at productive capacity of Nigeria, it's very low compared to our population and the size of our GDP. So nothing can be more important than having conversation around unemployment. And this conversation must be centered around youth unemployment, because you have capacity of young people who are able to deliver. When you consider what our population distribution looks like, majority of our population belongs to the youth population, but this population is also highly unemployed. In fact, the number for youth unemployment is higher than what the total unemployment figure is saying. So it's a right conversation to have, and I also believe that it's a concern to authorities, talking about federal, state, and local government.
Now let's talk about this population dynamics, which you've talked about. In Nigeria, we have higher fertility rates. We also have higher birth rates, or high birth rates than we have of high death rate, and you see younger people. So how much of this population dynamics, we're seeing our population grow fast, definitely. So how much of this population dynamics is adding pressure to the jobless market already that we have in the country? Because 43% of our population are under 15. So from 15 years or 16 above, with other people older, will fall under the 57% or so left, yes. So how much of pressure of this population dynamics, the higher growth rate, the higher birth rates and higher fertility rate, is adding pressure?
You see, this population dynamic should actually be good news for Nigeria. Two countries with population, with high increase in level of population, nearly 3%, Nigeria and Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia put some policy in place to even reduce the population growth rate to less than 1%, but there is no substantial policy direction to reduction in population in Nigeria. So in the next 5 years, Nigeria will be the only country that will have close to 3%. Now this may be good, this may be bad. It now depends on the kind of population. Is it optimum population we have? Is it, if our population is not optimum population, then it's bad news all the way.
What is optimum population?
Productive capacity, when you relate it to the population growth. When you compare the two, you see that our population is, in fact, not optimum in any way. So to have huge population, it means we are going to have huge defense. But when you look at what we have, high level of insecurity. So is this growth really having impact? So this is what I think we should consider. We have almost 43% at youth unemployment. But when you go to out-of-school children, because that's where it starts, over 12 million. Some authorities say 10 million. Between
yes,
10
I think
to 12
it has
million.
reduced now.
Yes, between 10 to 12 million. That is out-of-school children. These people are still below 15 years. People that are enumerated, they are less than 15 years. So when we continue to have huge number of people who don't have skills for employment when they go beyond 15 years, we shouldn't be surprised that our unemployment figures continue to increase. At best, what can they do? At best, we see them all around our major cities. They want to pick up menial jobs, and because they want to engage in employment capacity that does not really require skills, we see that at the end of the day, they want to make themselves happy in a way, and they still get married, they have more children, there is no education, formal education or informal education to some extent given to them. They just believe that they exist in life as God has told them to. So there is no proper education that we can that we have given to these people, and we still continue to see huge number. 10 million is a lot. 10 million, it's more than some states in Nigeria. So we are saying it's even bigger than some countries. We are saying we have countries that are out of school, that education, they are within the reach of education. So this should bother us, and this is one of the major contributors to why we are having a high number of unemployment figures among young people in Nigeria today.
Since you're talking about education, let's talk a bit about that education falls under human capital, definitely. And if you take a look at even part of the Sustainable Development Goals also talk about that, hunger, poverty, and some of the things we're looking at today. How important is getting people out of getting people out of the jobless market? How important is the development of human capital in the country? Because first and foremost, one would even define what is a job in Nigeria, really. I saw years ago the World Bank reports on more jobs and jobs. So I think that was the title of the report. They did it in 2015. And they did ask there, what is a job in Nigeria? You know, so I want to also ask you that question. What is a job in Nigeria vis-a-vis the human capital development that we have in the country? I hope you understand.
I do. Well, for me, I'm going to be very generic about it. A job is productive engagement that guarantees certain income for labor force. So it may vary from country to country, but generally it is expected that you should do at least up to 40 hours a week. Average of divided by 5 days in a week, you should say average of about 8 hours. But do people get productive? And this income, depending on your level of qualification. But let's assume there are no substantial qualification. We expect that when you divide this per day, you should earn more than minimum wage. Because if you earn, then who should work should also not be a child, so that we don't have child labor in the conversation. So when you talk about education.
But is that beginning to be a problem? Sorry, you just raised an important point.
Yes.
Is that beginning to be a problem,
of course,
child labor?
Yes, it's a major problem in our hands. But you see, when you talk about education, it is so central. Why has country developed, and what is the pattern of development? Nigeria is adopting some of the policies countries that have developed have adopted in the past, but they have not adopted those policies in isolation. In fact, what has driven those policies have not been politics. It has been the need for the people to transfer them or to take them out of a phase to a desirable state. What am I talking about? National investment, national social investment programs. Many countries have adopted it. But because the people are educated, a level of education is so high, and they understood that if we continue to run programs like these and no substantial education, which of course I'm not talking of university education this time, I'm talking of vocational education. Why has America lost a lot of jobs to China? Why is Nigeria losing more jobs to China, India, and a part of London, East London, in provision of school uniform or fabrics for us, even though we claim we have a functional textile industry? But why are we not able to produce what is sufficient and what we can make demand for? It is because the skill gap between Nigeria and some part of the world, we have to depend on them. But the good news is, the more skilled a nation is, the more guaranteed for employment, the more guaranteed for stable currency and prosperity. Okay. This is it.
Okay. We'll come back to skills a bit. Let's take a look at the welfare packages, which you talked about, the social interventions. We've seen different social interventions or different named social interventions in the last few years. NPA, you have the GEP, you have, as a result of COVID, you have
program, feeding program.
Yes, you have the school feeding program. You have market money, trader money, farmer money.
Government enterprise empowerment program.
That's GEP, which I mentioned earlier. You have, even because of COVID, the TCF, targeted credit facility, you have AXMEs by central bank. So you have different welfare packages in a bid to get more people working. Do you think it has worked?
They've not worked sufficiently because these are stopgaps. They are not transformational in nature. And I don't think there is any country you can mention that what guarantees employment remains government intervention. Many countries, even in the Western world, embraced intervention. They became interventionists because of the unusual environment called COVID-19. Immediately when COVID goes, they revert back to a sustainable program. These programs are good. They look beautiful. But we must understand that they will not become substitute for our development. We cannot be generating less than 5,000, we cannot be distributing, I beg your pardon, less than 5,000 megawatts for a population of 208 million people. It's just not sustainable. We also must do something critical about infrastructural development. And this majorly, because most people, over 90% of movement in Nigeria for goods and humans is via road. So we cannot leave the road in the state at which we have it and expect inflation to reduce. Look at yesterday's figure, National Bureau of Statistics, 16.47%. And what drove it? Food inflation, over 20%, inching towards 21%. Why? Insecurity, and more, apart from insecurity, is transportation. And maybe that is why federal government, through 2020 Finance Act, said they were going to review the rate of vehicular imports for commercial purposes to Nigeria, I think to about 5 or 10%. 5%. Now, that is good, but not sufficient. Infrastructure. So even if you get tax rebate to import more and more, what happens to the road? And this is not just on the table of federal government. State and local government must do just more than they are doing right now. I know the argument out there is, oh, where do we get money from? There is no money. When you look at what federal government is spending vis-à-vis debt service, it will worry you, just the way it's worrying anybody. In fact, government is currently considering to increase debt to GDP ratio from 25% to about 40%. A bigger headache for anybody that is reading between the line and looking at their doomsday if we don't do something about alternative revenue generation. And fortunately for Nigeria, there are huge revenue windows. I mean huge revenue windows that will shock any of us that we are borrowing money even till now.
Let's talk about this inflation, or perhaps in the case of Nigeria, stagflation. Should we worry about unemployment more than the rising inflation right now? Because we're already in a stagflation mode. That's one. I'm trying to rush so that, because we've got to go in a few minutes because of the next segment I have. That's the first question. The second question also is that of skills, which we talked about. How much skills are available in the country today vis-à-vis employment opportunities? That's the second part of the question. The third part of the question is urbanization also putting a pressure on the already high unemployment rate? Because you see a lot of people, as a result of trying to get better opportunities, they move to cities or larger cities within the state. So is urbanization also, forcing more people into employment? Unlike perhaps if more people stay in the rural areas, and perhaps if the infrastructure is also right, many people will not want to go to the urban centers.
You can help me with your second question.
What was my second question? I talked about skills.
Yes, skills.
Yes, skills. Sorry.
And available opportunities.
Yes. Are skills in Nigeria, how much skills are available for employment opportunities? So how many questions do you have there now?
Three.
Okay, I think I should put a last one, and I hope you can answer that in like 2 or 3 minutes. The last one is recession and high unemployment rate. Our economy is in a recession, definitely. How can we get out of this?
Okay, so I will start from the last. Economic theory says when you have recession and you are having high inflation, you are having high unemployment rate. When you look at what inflation is saying, it's been consistent for more than 2, 3, 4 quarters now. It continued to increase and sustain double digit, as against what central bank is projecting between 6 to 9%. Unfortunately, monetary authority cannot do much because the driver of inflation is not monetary factor, it is fiscal factor, evident in insecurity and infrastructure, which I mentioned earlier. Unemployment figure continue to increase according to National Bureau of Statistics. With a recession, if your recession span a little bit further, then you are no longer in recession, you are in depression. We may not be able to say it better than that. Then scale is so very central. But how you know whether we have the opportunity is in our output. And when you look at what we produce for the rest of the world, when countries were measured vis-a-vis their scale and the outputs they have, 113 countries were rated. Nigeria was rated 113th. Out of 113 countries. Why? The wristwatch you put on, the one I have, they were not made in Nigeria. Let's look at things around us. And the person watching us right now, even the beautiful hair, if it is a wig, it's imported. Your eyeglass may be imported. Your clothes may be imported. My tie is imported. If your name is Tokumbo, you are also imported. The person watching us may check his phone. Maybe the phone is imported. So what do you now say we talk about skills? Skills for us to become lecturer in the university. That is fine, but it's not sufficient. If we don't build skills that we guarantee what the rest of the world will consume, we will continue to create jobs for outside world. We will always create jobs. For
what types of jobs?
But we will create jobs that is not sustainable, that
was why
cannot
I
bring
asked that question
prosperity.
earlier. What is a job in Nigeria?
So the job in Nigeria majorly does not lead to the kind of prosperity for the majority. Very few. But what is encouraging us now that we should join is political party, because that seems to guarantee prosperity, as we can see. But is it sustainable? The answer is no. It is not sustainable. So we need to create a functional private sector to reduce the import and perhaps promote exports. Your question regarding urbanization, we all know the answer. We cannot continue to concentrate in few urban areas and expect the rural community not to move. They are free to move. So we can talk about elders, farmers clashes in the rural part. The truth is that one day farmers will also migrate to the urban center. We have nothing to it. The way of elders are also migrating, because these people, for God's sake, they have life, and we must assure them of living. So the job of authorities to do is to ensure that we put basic infrastructure. And this is one of the reasons why we have high cost of living and also high inflation. Lastly, inflation and unemployment. Which one is more important? Both are equally important. They are both macroeconomic variables. But when you still have job, you may still be able to purchase. But when you have low inflation and you have no means of livelihood, I'm afraid, then inflation, reduced inflation, means nothing. Why people can understand that they have no meat in their pot, they have no money in their bank account, they have nothing. But when you explain inflation to them, they may not know as much as impact. Why? Because inflation is an invisible force that takes from your money while the money remains in your pocket.
So in essence, jobs matter.
It matters a lot.
It matters. And that's what, like in the US, what they are pursuing right now. That our people have jobs first before we begin to talk of inflation. So we can agree, let inflation tick up a bit, let our people have inflation. Thank you very much.
Thank you so very much for having me,
Paul, for answering those questions. I sounded like a lecturer giving you some questions, but you were able you were able to pull through. Thank you very much for coming. All right, I've been speaking with Paul Alaje, who is the senior economist at SPM Professionals. Just before we go, in fact, it's not just a sad day for me. It's continually being a sad day in Nigeria. I don't know, you heard about the kidnapping today, yes, earlier today in Niger State. I think our government, enough of the sleep service, is not paying anyone. The insecurity in the country is harming us more than we can imagine. And there will be no economy if there is insecurity in the country. Please, please, it rests at the doorsteps of President Buhari. In case you're listening, that was why Nigerians voted for you. Thank you for watching our video. Please hit the subscribe button below, turn on post notification to follow all our updates.